Did you know that at one point in One Piece, Smoker, the Marine captain famous for always having a cigar, doesn't actually smoke? Instead, in the 4Kids version, he just has smoke magically coming out of his mouth. Like what? And it doesn't stop there. Sanji, the chain-smoking chef of the Straw Hats, trades his signature cigarette for a lollipop. I get it. 4Kids didn't want to promote smoking, but this just looks so wrong. Like this epic scene is totally ruined. If you think that was weird, well, we've just started. Let's talk about the iconic moment where Luffy pops out of a barrel in episode 1. In the original, it's straightforward. He opens his mouth and yells. But in the 4Kids version, they made his mouth look like he is actually talking to make it more clear to the viewers. He even closes his mouth when he is done talking. Like, just look at how they butchered my boy. One of the most insane censorships is with one of Buggy's crewmates. In the original, he's black, but in the 4Kids version, he's white. This change is so bizarre and unnecessary. Belmir's death in the original anime is devastating. She sacrifices herself for Nami and Nojiko, gunned down by Arlong. It's one of One Piece's most powerful scenes. However, 4Kids decided to, soften the blow. Instead of shooting her, Arlong just points at her menacingly. And Belmir? She didn't die. She's just imprisoned for life, as Arlong apparently threw her in a dungeon. But wait, why doesn't Nami rescue her mom after Luffy defeats Arlong? Well, apparently Belmir does eventually die in the 4Kids version as well, as we see Nami sitting at her grave. And, as you can see, the 4Kids version and the original version are the same here, but that's actually because they forgot to censor the grave at the end of the episode, because they actually changed her wooden cross grave into a more modern tombstone. Oh, and Belmir didn't attack Arlong with a gun, she jumped at him with a shovel instead. Going back to Belmir's grave, that wasn't the first time they forgot to censor or change something. In Buggy's flashback, he had just killed someone using the knife in his left hand. But 4Kids wanted it to seem like he only punched the guy, so they removed the knife. Only they forgot to redraw the part of Buggy's arm that the knife overlaid, leaving a partially drawn sword still visible. Before we continue with more of the insane censorships, let's talk about the name changes by 4Kids. For example, Roronoa Zoro now became Roronoa Zolo, because they didn't want to get in any copyright problems with the original Zoro. Smoker became Chaser, because he's chasing Luffy all over the place, I guess. Ace became Trace, don't ask me why. And Logtown is now Rogue Town, because pirates are rogues, I guess. Now let's continue with the visual censorships, and let's start with the heartfelt scene where Zoro is given rice balls by a little girl named Rika when he is captured by the corrupt Marine captain Axe Hand Morgan. So how did they change this scene? Well, 4Kids thought rice balls were too confusing for Western audiences, so they turned them into cookies instead. Another food and drink change was the infamous orange juice swap. Anytime a character drinks alcohol in the original, it magically turns into juice in 4Kids. So I guess Higuma just really wanted some orange juice when he kicked in the door and made a whole scene at Makino's bar. Although, sometimes they aren't even bothered to change the alcohol to juice, they just straight up remove the bottle. One of 4Kids' most bizarre changes? The weapons. They replaced guns with whatever they had lying around. The Marines? They're rockin' water guns. So, although they won't hurt anyone, they're Crocodile's biggest nightmare. Mary has... is that a Nerf gun? Helmeppo? He has some sort of weird gavel sci-fi zapper instead of a real gun. And oh, Don Krieg, his iconic spikes that he shoots at Luffy, well, they are suction cups. You heard me? Suction cups. And as you can see, Luffy seems like he's in agony from removing these super suction cups. Now let's go back to Zoro, or should I say Zolo. Not only did they change his name, they also changed his backstory. In the original, Zoro's childhood friend Quina tragically dies by the hands of the terrible Down D Stairs. It's a huge moment in his backstory as he makes her a promise that he will become the world's greatest swordsman even if she's not there to see it. However, in the 4Kids version, Quina didn't die. Instead, they came up with this genius story where Quina kicked some man's ass, and later the guy's friends ganged up on her and crippled her for life. So now Quina lives permanently paralyzed and unable to fulfill her dream of being a swordswoman. And this is just so disturbing. So in his flashback of Quina's death, he's just seen training. Just wow. If we continue with Zoro's flashback, Quina is seen showing Zoro that she is a woman and that she eventually won't be able to compete as a swordswoman because women are weaker than men. Her words, not mine. But this scene is cut entirely. And I can understand why 4Kids decided to cut out the scene. But still, a scene where the characters show emotion and depth is just gone. And this wasn't the only scene they cut out entirely. they continued to cut out a lot of scenes from the original, and a lot of those scenes were with poor Nami. And you can probably guess why. It's because Nami's outfits were, let's just say, bold and confident. For example, this scene was cut entirely. But they, of course, had to show Nami at some point, so instead they edited her clothes to make them less revealing. They also did this with Nico Robin. And this editing looks so bad. Again, I get it. 4Kids wanted to make the show kid-friendly, but come on, this looks so bad. Now let's talk about blood. In the original One Piece, blood is shown during fights, as that's what happens when pirates are fighting each other, especially with powerful devil fruits. Oh, and I almost forgot, devil fruits are now called cursed fruits. But as I said, blood in a pirate fight is realistic. But one thing you'll notice immediately in the 4Kids dub, there's no blood, at all. Characters get punched, slashed, but there's no red in sight. Instead, 4Kids replace blood with nothing. However, sometimes even a fight is way too much to show for 4Kids. During Luffy's fight with Buggy at Orangetown, Luffy kicks Buggy in his family jewels. But 4Kids removed this scene and instead showed how Luffy apparently kicked Buggy on the shin. Now, let's head to Alabasta, where Crocodile and Luffy face off for the first time. In the original, Crocodile shows the power of a warlord and is ruthless. At one point, he impales Luffy with his hook. But 4Kids couldn't have that, could they? Instead of impaling Luffy, Crocodile just holds him upside down. Here's where things get really unforgivable. 4Kids straight up removed entire arcs from the series. The Reverse Mountain arc, gone. Instead of meeting Laboon when they enter the Grand Line, the Straw Hats just hit an iceberg. And the funny thing about this is that this is the iceberg they encounter in episode 64 when making their way to Whiskey Peak. So as you can see, they clip back and forth between an open sea with the iceberg and scenes when they are still on the Reverse Mountain. So Laboon, one of the most lovable characters in the series, was erased from existence. Oh, and Crocus, the former doctor of the Roger Pirates, was of course also removed. But removing Laboon just doesn't make any sense, they just ruined a very important storyline. Because Brook's entire story was that he was going to sail with the crew and make his way back to meet Laboon, which we found out in the Thriller Bark arc. But luckily for 4Kids, they lost the One Piece license before making it to Thriller Bark. And we will actually go over how 4Kids ended their version of One Piece, and I promise you it will blow your mind. Another big arc that was removed was Little Garden, which some of you might not think is such a big deal. But this arc introduces us to some very important storylines. We find out that giants exist, and we learn about the legendary island of Giants Elbaf, which is actually where the crew is right now. We also miss out on Zoro's epic pose, so this was absolutely an important arc. They then also removed arcs like Warship Island and other filler arcs, which I guess is fine. Talking about things 4Kids removed, tattoos. For example, Ace's iconic tattoo is just gone. Daz Bones, aka Mr. One, also got his tattoo removed. Some other changes 4Kids made. Mihawk's cross necklace is now just a straight line. The Marines, or should I say, the Navy. Yep, 4Kids decided to rename the Marines to the Navy, but why? And finally, let's talk about the Rainbow Mist filler arc. If you skip this arc, I won't blame you. In the original, it's a fun, light-hearted side adventure. But in the 4Kids version, the Straw Hats die. Yeah, really. A ship falls on them and they're gone. End of story. In the original, they of course evade the falling ship and eventually get out of danger. But still, as this was the final episode 4Kids dubbed, it's one of the weirdest, most nonsensical changes in the 4Kids version. They turned a harmless filler arc into the series finale. So what do you think of the 4Kids dub? Share your favorite or most cringeworthy moments in the comments below. Thanks for watching and watch this video next.